Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to continue my look at the special edition collector series from ToyBiz of their Lord of the Rings 12-inch action figure line. And this video, of course, is going to be taking a look at Aragorn, one of the central heroes of this story. And so there's a lot of anticipation around this figure for me personally. So as ever, let's start off by looking at the packaging. By now, you'll be very familiar with the style of this packaging, but it is the first time we see one of these figures that was released for the Return of the King. It has a blue theme rather than the green or red as we've seen in previous videos, and we can see that ToyBiz have employed a consistent approach to this line as they did with the other films. We have the runes on the very edges of the package. We have that Middle-earth map, which is very nice in the background. We have the one ring with a cutout there so we can see the figure underneath, which is brilliant. And of course we have an image, a photograph image of the character Aragorn as played by Viggo Mortensen in the film. The side panel is a little underwhelming. We just have the Lord of the Rings logo. Of course we can see the map which wraps around all of the packaging. This time there is no images from any of the other characters. We saw in previous videos that there'd be orcs or Saruman or the hobbits or whoever it may be. In this case there's no one at all. And then on the reverse we have the Lord of the Rings logo. Again, we can see the map in the background. We have a little bit of text about the film, a little bit of bio about the character. Again, we have that same image that we see on the front of the packaging here, a little bit larger on the back of the packaging. And then at the very top, we see the silhouette of just the 3 or 4 characters who take part in this strand of the story in this particular film, which is a very nice touch. And then finally, of course, if we open up that flap on the front of the packaging, which is held together with Velcro, we can see on the left-hand side, again, that one ring. We can see the beautiful Middle-earth map underneath, and then we have a little bit more information about the character. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side, of course, we have that window display, and we can see this figure with all of his accessories and the full costume. Now, one of the things I have praised these figures for in this series is just the amount of detail and attention and love and care that went into producing the costumes on these characters. But before we get into all that good stuff here, I'm going to have to address the elephant in the room, which is this head sculpt, which I have to say is not the best likeness in the world. This is very, very disappointing to me. I think the other sculpts in this series have been pretty good, a bit hit and miss, maybe a little soft here and there, but this, for me, is probably the worst that I've seen so far in this series. It just falls quite short. I think a lot of it comes down to the beard and the way that's just been sort of, well, it feels like it's just been painted on, or maybe just felt tipped into place. I'm being a little bit facetious, but yeah, it just doesn't look right. The general elements are all there, but yeah, the proportions seem a little bit off, and yeah, the paint applications have not helped bring out the best in this sculpt, shall we say. So this is obviously very crucial, quite critical. This is one of the harder figures to find as well, so it's a shame that when, yeah, I did finally get my hands on him, that this is what I was confronted with. Now, having said that, where these figures really shine is in the tailoring. I think they do such a loving job with these costumes. There's so many different materials and textures used on this figure. He has this bandana, which is a nice soft cotton material. Then he's got this felt cloak, which is a nice deep green. Underneath that, of course, we can see his habit is sort of brown felt habit there. Again, lots of different textures, little lacy touches. This all feels and looks very nice. We can see individual hatching and stitching in his shoulder piece there, and it looks really nice. We can see lots more detail when it comes to his belt. Again, we can see lots of individual loose strands that are made from different materials. We can see his belt there. We can see that metal buckle, which is very, very nice. And he even has this sort of brown sponge-like material. I'm not entirely sure what it's meant to be, but hey, it's pretty cool. On his right arm, we can see this lovely detail here, which has been individually sewn in with a different colour string, which really highlights this. I think this is great. Obviously, this is for his archery arm. I think this looks really nice. This arm guard is fantastic. We can see his gauntlet here as well on his wrist. Again, different material, kind of a felty kind of black material with a painted on bit in the centre of the backhand there. Nice little details, lots of different textures that are really fun to explore. His left hand is an open hand, and you can see they've actually painted in one of his rings there as well. This is a little bit more simplistic, a little bit more clumsy, I think, than this line really deserves. But hey, at least they've still made that effort, that attention to detail there, and tried to bring this to life. On his back, we can see this rolled up matte kind of effect, which is nice. Again, they've done a really nice job of fabricating this with a nice sort of faux leather material, so it's got that kind of squishy feel. And then, of course, they've got the felt tiebacks to really set this off and give it that authentic feel. So I think this looks really good. And again, you have to give him an A for effort here. And at the bottom of his cloak, we can actually see some mud effects as well, which is cool. So these are painted on. It makes the material a little bit more stiff and hard as mud would be. And I think this looks really cool. And then, of course, we can see his boots again. Nice job with the felt ties there, a little bit of mud on them, and even underneath on the soles of those boots, which are all one sort of sewn in material, he actually has a sort of faux leather base as well to create that boot effect, which is quite good. So this is quite a simplistic approach, and yet there's an awful lot of attention to detail here and a real effort to create a lot of different textures that make this figure really fun to look at and put on display. There's no real surprises for the articulation if you've seen any of the figures in this line. He does have a swivel at the head, so he can spin his head from side to side. He can't really look up and down because of that solid hair piece there, but he can move it from side to side just about. Now, he does have ball joints in the shoulders, so he can kick his arms all the way up. They also come all the way forwards and all the way back. There's a huge range of motion in these arms, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, he's got a swivel, of course, in that bicep, and then there's a single joint at the elbow, so we can get his lower arm all the way to the 90 degrees there. He's only got a swivel at the wrist, so it does rotate 360 degrees, but it doesn't hinge forwards or backwards, sadly. There is a ball joint in the torso of the figure which will allow him to spin from side to side, and it will let him bend forwards and backwards a little bit, and it's probably most effective at letting him lean from side to side. There's ball joints in the hips, so he can kick his legs out to the side. He can kick them forwards and get them back a little distance as well. And of course, there's a single joint at the knee, allowing that lower leg to bend to 90 degrees. And then finally, there is also a hinge at the ankle as well, allowing that foot to move forwards and backwards. Surprisingly, the only accessory he comes with is his sword, and as is a recurring problem with the figures in this line, the sword has a tendency to want to warp, and it will be warped in package, even mint. It is kind of a weak plastic that is very wavy when you get it out, so that is a bit of an issue with this line. As you'd expect, he does have a plastic sheath though to be able to insert this sword into, which is really cool. This is a nice touch. You can slide it in there with no issues, and this looks pretty cool. And I have to say, the detailing and the paint apps on this sword, in particular the hilt, are very nicely done. All in all, this isn't a bad figure overall, but I have to say he's my first real disappointment so far. Yes, he has great articulation, he can do everything I could pretty much want him to do. I think his costume is lovely, like we've seen with the other figures in this line, but the head sculpt is quite clearly off. It's just very, very hard to get past, really. It's not a very good likeness. The articulation is compromised by that head sculpt because he can't really get the full use out of his head there, unfortunately, because of that plastic hair preventing him from getting certain positions. And, you know, the sword, again, as we've seen with many of the other figures in this line, having that wavy sort of effect is a little bit compromising when you want to have a dramatic display. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.